The great meeting hall on Nexus Prime was bigger than any building Jake Morrison had ever seen on Earth. The ceilings stretched so high that clouds formed near the top, and the walls curved in a perfect circle that could hold thousands of beings. Today, it held representatives from 47 different worlds, all sitting in their special seats designed for their particular body types. Jake sat in the human section, which was tucked away in a corner like an afterthought. The seats were plain metal chairs, nothing like the floating crystal platforms the Zephyrians used or the heated stone slabs the rock-like Vorthans preferred. It was a clear message about where humans stood in the galactic order. Lisa Hayes sat beside him, her military uniform crisp despite the long journey to Nexus Prime. She watched the alien delegates with careful eyes, noting how they moved, how they talked, how they looked at the human section with barely hidden amusement. As a captain in Earth's space fleet, she had fought beside some of these species. She had also fought against others. But here in this grand hall, they all seemed to agree on one thing. Humans did not belong at the big table. The current speaker was Counselor Vextai from the Hegemony, a tall insect-like being with 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected the hall's lights like tiny mirrors. His voice came through the translation device as a cold, mechanical tone, but Jake could hear the smugness underneath. The matter of the Kepler mining rights requires careful consideration, Vextai was saying. We cannot simply allow any species to claim territory in such valuable systems. There must be standards. There must be civilization. Several delegates made sounds that the translator interpreted as agreement. Jake felt his jaw tighten. The Kepler system was only 12 light-years from Earth's newest colony. If the Council handed those mining rights to the Hegemony, human ships would have to travel through their space to reach 3 of Earth's outer settlements. Jake stood up slowly. The hall grew quiet, and he could feel thousands of eyes turning toward him. Many of those eyes belonged to species he had never seen before, beings with too many limbs or no limbs at all, creatures that breathed different gases or lived in different gravity fields. But they all shared the same expression when they looked at him, curiosity mixed with condescension. The United Earth Federation has colonies in that region, Jake said clearly. We should have a say in who gets the mining rights. A sound rippled through the hall that the translator couldn't interpret, but Jake knew it was laughter. The Solonian Chancellor, a being that looked like a walking tree with silver bark, spoke up. The humans are amusing. Do they think they're 5 little colonies compared to the Hegemony's 300 worlds? More laughter. Jake remained standing, his hands clasped behind his back. Lisa shifted in her seat, and he could see her fingers twitching toward her sidearm. 3 years of this treatment had worn thin on both of them. Numbers are not the only thing that matters, Jake replied. Earth has contributed to galactic security. We ended the Kree-Mantis War. We've shared our technology freely with council members. We've sent our people to fight and die for galactic peace. The laughter stopped. The Kree-Mantis War was still fresh in everyone's memory. For 15 years, 2 powerful species had torn apart entire star systems in their conflict. The Council had tried mediation, economic sanctions, even limited military intervention. Nothing worked. The war had seemed endless until human negotiators found a solution that satisfied both sides, and human engineers helped rebuild the damaged worlds. But Counselor Thane Krell from the Dominion was not impressed. He was a large, bear-like creature with purple fur and small, intelligent eyes. Yes, the humans helped end that war. We are grateful. But gratitude does not equal competence in complex galactic affairs. The Kepler system requires sophisticated management. Perhaps in a few hundred years, when your species has matured. Matured? Lisa spoke for the first time, her voice sharp. Jake shot her a warning look, but she continued. We've been in space for less than a century, and we've already solved problems that stumped species with 1,000-year-old civilizations. Maybe the problem isn't our maturity. The hall erupted in angry chittering, roaring, and other sounds that the translator gave up trying to interpret. Jake raised his hand for silence, and eventually the noise died down. What Captain Hayes means, he said diplomatically, is that humans bring a different perspective to galactic problems. Fresh ideas can be valuable. The Zephyrian delegate, a tall being with blue skin and no visible mouth, spoke through a device attached to its throat. Different perspectives are indeed valuable. But the Kepler system is too important for ... experiments. The hegemony has proven experience in managing mining operations. Humans do not. Because you've never given us the chance, Jake said. Every time Earth applies for mining rights, we're told we lack experience. Every time we ask for a seat on the military council, we're told we're too young a species. Every time we propose a solution to a galactic problem, we're told to be grateful for guidance from our betters. The last words came out harder than Jake intended. He had spent 3 years being polite, diplomatic, and patient. He had smiled when council members talked over him, nodded when they explained things to him like he was a child, and thanked them when they tossed Earth the scraps from their grand plans. Councillor Vexthai's compound eyes glittered. Perhaps the humans are forgetting their place. Your species has been granted membership in this council as a courtesy, not a right. You have no voting power precisely because you cannot be trusted with important decisions. Cannot be trusted? Jake's voice rose slightly. We've never broken a treaty. We've never started a war. We've never claimed territory that wasn't ours. What exactly makes us untrustworthy? Your unpredictability, the Solonian Chancellor said. Your tendency toward violence. Your short lifespans that make you prone to hasty decisions. These are not criticisms, merely observations about your species' nature. Jake looked around the hall at the faces staring back at him. Some showed amusement, others boredom, a few showed what might have been sympathy, but none showed respect. Not one of these beings saw humans as equals. He thought about Earth, about the colonies spreading out among the stars, about the millions of people who looked to their government for protection and representation. He thought about the human soldiers who had died in the Kree Mantis War, about the human scientists who had shared their discoveries freely, about the human explorers who had mapped dangerous regions of space for the benefit of all council species. And he thought about this morning's briefing, where he had been told that the council was considering a proposal to limit human space travel to prevent unfortunate incidents with more advanced species. Jake Morrison had been a diplomat for 25 years. He had served on Earth, on Mars, and on a dozen alien worlds. He had negotiated trade deals, peace treaties, and cultural exchanges. He had always believed that patience and reason could overcome any obstacle, but as he stood in that vast hall, surrounded by beings who saw his entire species as children, playing at civilization, something inside him finally broke. The United Earth Federation, he said quietly, formally withdraws from all peace negotiations. The hall went completely silent. Even the artificial environmental system seemed to quiet down as if the building itself was holding its breath. Counselor. Vexthai leaned forward. Surely you jest. Humans cannot survive without council protection and trade agreements. Jake began gathering his papers from the table. Each movement was deliberate, calm, final. We'll see about that. He turned to Lisa, who was already standing. Signal the fleet. We're going home. As they walked toward the exit, Jake could hear the sound starting to build behind them again. This time it wasn't laughter, it was something else entirely. Something that sounded almost like concern, but Jake Morrison didn't look back. He was done looking back. 6 months had passed since the human delegation walked out of the Galactic Council chambers. On Nexus Prime, the alien representatives had spent the first few weeks waiting for Earth to send a message begging to return. When no such message came, they shrugged their various shoulders and went back to their normal business of dividing up the galaxy among themselves. The Kepler mining rights went to the hegemony, as expected. The Zephyrians got exclusive trading privileges in the outer spiral. The Vorthans received military contracts for 3 new council fleets. Life went on exactly as it had before humans arrived, and most council members were happy to pretend that the awkward interruption had never happened. But on Earth, in a secure meeting room beneath the Swiss Alps, a very different conversation was taking place. Admiral Ben Carter stood at the head of a long table surrounded by the most powerful people in human space. The walls were lined with screens showing star charts, fleet positions, and classified reports that would have shocked the Galactic Council if they had bothered to look. "While they've been busy playing politics," Carter said, pointing to a holographic display of the galaxy, "we've been busy preparing." The display showed the official borders of human space as the Council understood them. 15 star systems, mostly on the outer edge of the galaxy, with a few scattered colonies that barely registered on galactic maps. But then Carter pressed a button, and the display changed. New dots appeared across the map, dozens of them. Star systems that the Council had marked as uninhabited or worthless suddenly showed signs of human activity. Mining operations in asteroid fields, research stations in empty space, military bases and systems so remote that no other species had bothered to explore them. President Helen Brooks leaned forward in her chair. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes, but her voice carried the authority of someone who spoke for 8 billion people. "How many?" 47 additional systems, Carter replied. All of them established during the last 3 years of negotiations. While our diplomats were sitting in that chamber being lectured about human immaturity, our scouts were mapping every unguarded system within 100 light-years of Earth. Dr. Amanda Foster, the head of the Terran Research Division, activated her own display. She was young for such an important position, only 35, but she had a mind that could solve problems other humans couldn't even understand. The Council made one critical mistake. They assumed that sharing technology with us was safe because we were too primitive to improve on it. Her display showed technical specifications that looked like alien designs, but with subtle differences. Weapons that fired faster, shields that lasted longer, engines that could travel farther without refueling. "Every piece of technology they shared with us we've studied, understood, and enhanced," Foster continued. "Our new stealth frigates use a modified version of Zephyrian cloaking technology, but our version is 30% more efficient. Our plasma cannons are based on Vorthan designs, but they have twice the range and 3 times the power output." Colonel Ryan Torres, a man who looked like he had been carved from stone, stood up from his seat. He commanded the Sol Defense Force, the military unit responsible for protecting Earth's home system. "We've been testing these new technologies in secret for months. Our pilots are trained on ships that the Council has never seen. Our soldiers carry weapons that Council intelligence doesn't know exist." He activated a video feed that showed human ships moving through space in perfect formation. They were sleek, angular vessels that looked nothing like the bulky designs the Council associated with human engineering. As the camera watched, the ships simply vanished, their stealth systems making them invisible to sensors. "Every human colony now has a trained defense force," Torres continued. "We've stockpiled weapons, food, and medical supplies. We've established hidden supply depots and systems the Council doesn't even know about. If they want to treat us like children, they're going to learn what happens when children grow up angry." General Patricia Stone, the overall commander of human military forces, pulled up another set of data. She was older than the others, a veteran of the early colonial wars when humans first began expanding into space. The Council's intelligence network is impressive, but it has one major weakness. They don't consider humans important enough to watch closely. The data showed Council ship movements, patrol routes, and communication patterns. We've been monitoring their activities for years. We know where their fleets are stationed, how they communicate, and what their standard responses are to different threats. They know almost nothing about our current capabilities. President Brooks studied the displays with growing satisfaction. When the human delegation had returned from Nexus Prime, she had faced a choice. She could have ordered them to go back, to apologize, to beg for readmission to the Council. Many of her advisors had suggested exactly that. Instead, she had chosen a different path. What about the other species? The ones who aren't part of the Council's inner circle? "That's the interesting part," Carter replied. 12 non-council species have approached us through back channels. They're tired of being treated like servants by the major powers. They want to know if humanity is planning to create an alternative to the council system. And what have you told them? Nothing yet. But the Altarians have offered to share their agricultural technology. The Centauri free traders want to establish exclusive trade agreements. The Rigel Alliance is hinting that they might be willing to share military intelligence about council fleet movements. Dr. Foster added, the council made another mistake. They assumed that everyone in the galaxy was happy with their system of government. But there are dozens of species who feel just as dismissed and ignored as we do. Captain Kevin Nash appeared on one of the communication screens. He was speaking from the bridge of his ship, the UES Defiance, which was currently stationed in a system that the council maps showed as empty space. Ma'am, we've detected 3 more council survey ships trying to enter what they think is unclaimed territory. They're getting closer to our hidden bases, Brooks nodded. Standard procedure, Captain. Send them away. Yes, ma'am. But they're getting more persistent. I think they're starting to realize that something is different about this region of space. After Nash's image disappeared, the room fell quiet. Everyone present understood what was happening. The council had spent decades building a system where they controlled everything that mattered in the galaxy. They decided who could trade with whom, who could settle which planets, who could build fleets, and who had to ask permission to defend themselves. For 3 years, humanity had played by their rules. They had sat in that chamber listening to lectures about their limitations, accepting scraps of territory and grateful smiles when they were allowed to participate in minor decisions. They had been patient, diplomatic, and reasonable, but patience had limits, and humanity's patience had finally run out. The council thinks we withdrew because we were angry, Brooks said quietly. They think we'll cool down and come back asking for forgiveness. They have no idea that we've spent the last 3 years preparing for this moment. She stood up and walked to the largest display, which showed the current positions of every major council fleet. They're about to learn that underestimating humans is a very dangerous mistake. Torres pulled up a new set of data. We've been running simulations. If the council decides to force us back into negotiations, they'll send a fleet to human space. Probably something impressive, but not overwhelming. They'll want to make a point without starting a real war. And when they do, they'll discover that human space is much larger than they thought, and much better defended. Foster smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. The council representatives used to joke that humans were like children playing with grown-up toys. They're about to find out what happens when those children learn to build better toys. The meeting continued for several more hours, but the important decisions had already been made. Humanity would not return to the council chambers. They would not apologize for walking out. They would not beg for readmission to a system that treated them like second-class citizens. Instead, they would wait. They would continue building their hidden fleets, expanding their secret territory, and preparing for the day when the council finally realized that the galaxy had changed, that day was coming sooner than anyone expected. The first ship to disappear was the Zephyrian merchant vessel Golden Current. It had been carrying a cargo of rare metals from the mining world of Kepler-7 to the industrial centers of the inner spiral when it simply vanished from all tracking. Systems, no distress signal, no debris field. No trace of what had happened. Captain Alexan of the Zephyrian Trade Fleet filed a routine report about equipment failure and moved on. Ships went missing in space all the time. Pirates, technical problems, navigation errors, or simple accidents could make a vessel disappear without a trace. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, and the Golden Current was just another casualty of interstellar commerce. But then it happened again. The Vorthan transport ship Stone Carrier vanished 3 weeks later while carrying military supplies to a council outpost. This time, the disappearance was noticed more quickly because the ship had been traveling with an escort. The escort reported that the Stone Carrier had been there one moment and gone the next, as if it had simply been erased from existence. Admiral Zara Kane of the Council Defense Force began to pay attention. She was a Rigelian, a species known for their analytical minds and attention to detail. Her silver-skinned face showed no emotion as she reviewed the reports, but her large black eyes missed nothing. "Show me the flight paths," she ordered her. Aide, a young Altarian named Flux, the holographic display in her office showed the routes both ships had taken. At first glance, they seemed to have nothing in common. The Golden Current had been traveling through the outer spiral region, while the Stone Carrier had been heading toward the neutral zone, but when Kane overlaid the routes on a star chart, she noticed something interesting. Both ships had passed through or near space that was officially uninhabited, but close to the systems where humans had established colonies. "Have there been any other disappearances in this region?" she asked. Flux checked his records. 7 merchant vessels and 2 exploration ships in the past 4 months. All carrying valuable cargo or sensitive equipment. Kane leaned back in her chair. 9 ships in 4 months was unusual, but not unprecedented. Space was dangerous, and that particular region was known for having unstable star systems and dangerous asteroid fields. But something about the pattern bothered her. What kind of cargo were they carrying? The merchant ships were loaded with advanced technology. Weapon systems, sensor arrays, communication equipment. The exploration ships were carrying geological surveys and mineral samples from uninhabited worlds. Now Kane was truly interested. Ships carrying valuable technology disappearing near human space could be a coincidence. But it could also be something else entirely. She decided to investigate further. Meanwhile, on Nexus Prime, the Council was dealing with what they considered more important matters. The Hegemony and the Dominion were having another border dispute. The Solonians were complaining about trade restrictions. The Vorthans wanted to increase their military budget. The disappearance of a few merchant ships was hardly worth the Council's attention. Councillor Vextai was in the middle of a long speech about mining rights when his aide approached with an urgent message. The insect-like being paused his speech to read the datapad, and his compound eyes flickered with surprise. "It seems we have a more immediate problem," he announced to the chamber. "The luxury liner Celestial Dawn has failed to arrive at its destination." The Celestial Dawn was not just any ship. It was the most expensive passenger vessel in Council space, designed to carry wealthy tourists and important dignitaries in perfect comfort. More importantly, it was currently carrying 12 Council representatives who had been attending a trade conference in the outer spiral. What was their route? Asked Councillor Thane Krell from the Dominion. They were taking a shortcut. Through the Kepler sector, Vextai replied. The captain believed it would save 2 days of travel time. The chamber erupted in worried chatter. The Kepler sector was officially uninhabited, but it was also very close to the outer edge of human space. If something had happened to the Celestial Dawn in that region, it could create a diplomatic incident. "Send a search fleet immediately," ordered the Solonian Chancellor. "Find that ship and bring our people home." Admiral Kane received the order to organize the search operation. She assembled a fleet of 12 ships, including her own command vessel, the Infinite Justice. The ships were equipped with the most advanced sensors in Council space, capable of detecting even the smallest piece of debris across multiple star systems. It took them 3 days to find what remained of the Celestial Dawn. The debris field was spread across thousands of kilometers of space, but it was clearly artificial. The ship had been destroyed by weapons fire, not by accident or system failure. But even more disturbing was what they found floating among the wreckage: a single message beacon, still broadcasting on all frequencies. "This is human space," the message said in perfect galactic standard. "Leave immediately or face the consequences." The words were spoken by a human voice, calm and matter-of-fact, as if the speaker was discussing the weather. But the implications were terrifying. Admiral Kane played the message for her officers, and the bridge of the Infinite Justice fell silent. Finally, her tactical officer, a Zephyrian named Slekstar, spoke up. "Admiral, this region is supposed to be uninhabited. How can it be human space?" Kane studied the star charts displayed on her screens. According to Council records, the nearest human colony was 15 light-years away from the debris field. But if humans were claiming territory in supposedly empty space, it would explain the missing ships. Run a full sensor sweep of this entire region, she ordered. I want to know what else is out here. The results were shocking. The sensors detected artificial structures in 6 different star systems, mining operations, communication arrays, and what appeared to be military installations. All of them were hidden using technology that the Council had never seen before. How long have they been here? Asked her science officer. Unknown. But based on the size of these installations, they've been building for years. Kane sent an encrypted message to the Council, reporting her findings. Within hours, she received new orders, establish a perimeter around the human installations and demand an explanation, but when her ships moved to carry out those orders, they discovered something else. The human installations were not undefended. Weapon systems that had been invisible to Council sensors suddenly came online, targeting the approaching ships with deadly accuracy. Admiral, her communications officer reported, we're receiving a transmission from the human installations. The voice that came through the speakers was different from the one on the message beacon, but equally calm. This is Captain Danny Roberts of the United Earth Defense Force. You are trespassing in human territory. Turn around and leave immediately. This is Admiral Kane of the Council Defense Force, she replied. These systems are not listed as human territory in Council records. We demand an explanation for your presence here. We don't answer to the Council anymore, Roberts responded. You made that clear when you told us we were too primitive to have a real voice in galactic affairs. Now we're handling our own affairs? You cannot simply claim territory without Council approval. We're not claiming territory. We're defending it. These systems have been under human control for 3 years. We've been mining them, building in them, and living in them while you were busy dividing up the galaxy among yourselves. Admiral Kane felt a cold fear growing in her chest. If humans had been secretly expanding their territory for 3 years, how much space were they actually controlling? And how had they managed to hide it so effectively? The missing ships, she said. You destroyed them. We defended our territory from trespassers carrying stolen goods, Roberts replied. Ships that enter human space without permission are treated as pirates or spies. They are given one warning. If they don't leave, they are stopped. Those ships were operating in supposedly uninhabited space. That space is inhabited by us, has been for years. Your intelligence services might have noticed if they bothered to look. The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Kane staring at her screens in disbelief. The humans had not just withdrawn from the Council. They had quietly built a shadow empire in the spaces between the official borders, using technology that made their installations invisible to Council sensors. Back on Nexus Prime, the Council chamber was in chaos. The news of human territorial expansion had spread through the diplomatic community like wildfire. Species that had laughed at humanity's withdrawal 6 months ago were now demanding answers. How did they hide an entire expansion program from U.S.? Demanded the Solonian Chancellor. Because we weren't looking, Councillor Vexthai admitted reluctantly. We assumed they would come crawling back within a few weeks. We stopped monitoring their activities. And now they're shooting down our ships, added Councillor Krell. This is an act of war. But Admiral Kane's final report made it clear that the situation was more complicated than anyone had realized. The humans weren't just hiding in empty space. They had built a military force that could challenge Council authority. And they were no longer interested in playing by Council rules. The galaxy had changed, and the Council was only just beginning to understand how much. President Helen Brooks stood in the Situation Room beneath Washington, surrounded by screens that showed the real map of human space. It was very different from what the Galactic Council believed, where they saw 15 small colonies scattered. On the edge of the galaxy, the truth revealed over 100 human settlements spread across 47 star systems. Mining operations, research stations, military bases, and full colonies with millions of people who had been living and working in secret for 3 years. Ma'am, reported Captain Kevin Nash from the bridge of the UES Defiance, Council forces are gathering at Rally Point 7. Admiral Kane has assembled a fleet of 60 ships. They appear to be preparing for what their communications are calling a police action. Brooks smiled grimly. A police action. Even now, after discovering human installations throughout the region, the Council still thought they were dealing with a few rebellious colonists who could be brought back into line with a show of force. What's their estimated arrival time? 18 then. Hours, assuming they take the direct route through the Kepler system. General Patricia Stone, standing beside a holographic display of the approaching Council fleet, shook her head. They're making the same mistake they've always made. They think this is about territory or resources. They don't understand that this is about respect. Admiral Ben Carter activated another display showing human fleet positions. The ships were spread throughout the region, but they could be assembled quickly when needed. All units are in position and ready for your orders, ma'am. Brooks walked over to the communications console. Open a secure channel to all human commanders. The screens around the room filled with the faces of ship captains, colony governors, and military leaders from across human space. Some were aboard warships hidden in asteroid fields. Others commanded space stations that the Council had never detected. A few were speaking from planets that officially didn't exist on any galactic maps. The Council has decided to respond to our withdrawal with force, Brooks announced. They're sending a fleet to bring us back into line. This is what we've been preparing for. Captain Danny Roberts, commanding the defense of the Kepler system, spoke first. My ships are ready, ma'am. We've been drilling for this scenario for months. Remember, Brooks continued, we didn't start this fight. For 3 years, we tried to work within their system. We sent diplomats to their meetings, followed their rules, and accepted their insults. They chose to treat us like children. Now, they're going to learn what happens when those children grow up. Colonel Ryan Torres appeared on one of the screens, speaking from the hidden military base on Kepler 4. All defense platforms are online and charged. The Council fleet won't even see them until it's too late? Dr. Amanda Foster's voice came through. The speaker's from her research station in the outer system. The new weapon systems have been tested and approved. Our ships now have capabilities that the Council has never encountered. Brooks nodded. Remember, we're not trying to conquer the galaxy. We just want to be left alone to build our own future. But if they insist on forcing us back into their system, we'll show them exactly why that's impossible. The transmission ended, and Brooks turned to her senior staff. How many ships will we have available for the engagement? Carter consulted his displays. 47 combat vessels, ranging from destroyers to our new heavy cruisers, plus 16 support ships and the fixed defenses we've installed throughout the system. Against 60 Council ships? The numbers favor them, Stone admitted. But numbers aren't everything. Our ships are faster, better armed, and equipped with stealth technology they can't detect. More importantly, our crews have been training specifically for this type of engagement. Brooks walked to the largest screen, which showed a real-time image of space around Earth. Hundreds of ships moved through the darkness, some heading to defensive positions, others preparing for combat. It was hard to believe that just 3 years ago, humanity had been begging for scraps from the Council table. Send the message, she ordered. The message went out on all frequencies, broadcast to every Council ship in the fleet and transmitted directly to Nexus Prime. It was simple, direct, and final. This is President Helen Brooks of the United Earth Federation. For 3 years, our diplomats sat in your chambers and listened to your lectures about human limitations. You told us we were too young, too primitive, too violent to be trusted with real responsibility in galactic affairs. You were wrong. On the bridge of the Infinite Justice, Admiral Kane listened to the human president's words with growing unease. The Council fleet was already moving toward human space, confident that a show of overwhelming force would bring the rebellious colonies back into line. But something about the human response was bothering her. You dismissed our contributions to galactic peace, Brooks continued. You ignored our solutions to galactic problems. You treated us like servants who should be grateful for your guidance. We tried to work within your system, but you made it clear that we would never be equals in your eyes. Kane studied the sensor readings from her scouts. The human installations they had discovered were larger and more sophisticated than initial REPORTS had suggested. And there were more of them than anyone had expected. So we built our own system, Brooks said. While you were busy dividing up the galaxy among yourselves, we were quietly building something better. Human space is now larger than you realize. And better defended than you can imagine? The message paused, and Kane could hear activity in the background. Voices giving orders, computers processing data, the sound of a military command center in full operation. We don't want your territory, Brooks resumed. We don't want to rule your worlds. We just want to be left alone to chart our own course among the stars. But if you insist on treating us as rebellious subjects who need to be disciplined, you're going to discover that we're no longer the species you remember. Captain Nash's voice came through the communication system of every Council ship simultaneously. Council Fleet, this is Captain Kevin Nash of the United Earth Defense Force. You are approaching the borders of human space. Turn around now, and no harm will come to you. Admiral Kane activated her own communication system. This is Admiral Kane of the Council Defense Force. We are conducting a lawful operation to restore order in this region. Stand down immediately. I'm afraid we can't do that, Admiral, Nash replied. Human space is no longer subject to Council authority. You are trespassing in sovereign territory. There is no such thing as sovereign human territory outside of your assigned colonial zones. There is now. Kane's tactical officer looked up from his displays with confusion. Admiral, I'm reading massive energy signatures throughout this system. It's like the entire region just came alive. On his screen, dozens of previously invisible installations suddenly appeared. Space stations, weapon platforms, and military. Bases that had been completely hidden from Council sensors were now showing up as clear contacts. Even more disturbing, they were all powering up their weapon systems. How many installations are there? Kane asked. Over 100 in the system alone, and Admiral ... They're not just defensive positions. Some of these installations are the size of small cities. Kane felt her confidence wavering. The Council had expected to find a few hidden outposts and maybe a dozen ships. Instead, they had discovered what appeared to be an entire civilization that had been built in secret. Admiral, her communications officer reported, we're receiving multiple transmissions from human installations throughout the region. They're all saying the same thing: leave immediately or face the consequences. And if we refuse, then they'll consider us an invading force and respond accordingly. Kane looked at the tactical display showing the positions of her 60 ships compared to the hundreds of human installations that had just revealed themselves. The Council fleet was outnumbered 3-1, and they were deep inside what appeared to be a heavily fortified star system. Admiral, her science officer said quietly, I'm detecting weapon signatures that I don't recognize. The humans appear to have developed technology that's not in our databases. For the first time since the operation began, Admiral Kane wondered if the Council had made a serious mistake. They had assumed that the human withdrawal was a temporary tantrum that could be corrected with a firm response. But the evidence was mounting that humanity had used their 3 years of isolation to become something entirely different, something much more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Send a message to Nexus Prime, she ordered. Tell them we may need reinforcements. But even as she gave the order, Admiral Kane suspected that reinforcements might not be enough. The humans had spent 3 years preparing for this moment, and they had clearly used that time well. The galaxy was about to learn just how well. The Battle of Kepler's Gate began at exactly 14:30 Galactic Standard Time, when Admiral Kane's fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system. What they found waiting for them was nothing like what the Council had expected. The space around Kepler's Gate was filled with human ships, not the dozen or so vessels that Council intelligence had predicted, but over 40 warships arranged in perfect defensive formations. They were sleek, Angular designs that looked nothing like the bulky human ships the Council remembered from 3 years ago. Captain Danny Roberts stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance, watching the Council fleet materialize on his sensors. Behind him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency, their hands moving over controls with the confidence that came from months of training for this exact moment. "All ships, this is command," Roberts said into his communication system. "Council. Forces have arrived. Remember what they taught us about being too primitive for real responsibility? Today we show them how wrong they were." Admiral Kane studied the tactical display on her bridge with growing concern. The human fleet was outnumbered, but they were positioned perfectly to defend the system. More troubling, her sensors were detecting weapon signatures that didn't match anything in Council databases. "Open a channel to the human fleet," she ordered. "This is Admiral Kane of the Council Defense Force," she broadcast. "You are in violation of galactic law by claiming territory without Council approval. Surrender immediately and return to your assigned colonial zones," Roberts smiled grimly. "This is Captain Roberts of the United Earth Defense Force. You are trespassing in human space. Leave immediately and no harm will come to you. We do not recognize your authority in this region." "Then you're going to have a very educational day." The first shots came from the Council fleet. Admiral Kane had ordered a warning barrage, expecting the humans to back down when faced with superior firepower. The plasma bolts streaked across space toward the human ships, but something impossible happened. The human vessels simply weren't there anymore. "Report!" Kane shouted. "The human ships have vanished from our sensors," her tactical officer replied, his voice shaking. "It's like they just stopped existing." But Roberts and his captains hadn't stopped existing. They had activated the stealth systems that Dr. Foster's team had spent 2 years perfecting. Based on captured alien technology but improved far beyond its original capabilities, the human cloaking devices made their ships completely invisible to Council sensors. The first Council ship to die was the heavy cruiser Dominant Will. One moment, it was firing into empty space where human ships had been. The next moment it was erupting in a ball of fire as weapons struck it from impossible angles. The crew barely had time to send a distress signal before their ship was gone. "Where are they?" Admiral Kane demanded. "How are they targeting us if we can't see them?" Her science officer was frantically checking his instruments. "Unknown, Admiral. Our sensors show empty space, but something is definitely out there." The battle became a nightmare for the Council fleet. Human ships appeared just long enough to fire, then vanished again before the Council vessels could return fire. It was like fighting ghosts that could kill but couldn't be killed in return. The human weapons were another shock. Instead of the standard plasma cannons that most species used, the humans fired beams of pure energy that cut through Council shields like they weren't there. Ships that should have been able to withstand hours of bombardment were being destroyed in minutes. Captain Roberts watched the battle unfold from his command center, feeling no joy in the destruction but knowing it was necessary. The Council had to learn that humanity was no longer the weak species they could push around. "Target the command ship," he ordered. "Let's give Admiral Kane something to think about." The Infinite Justice shuddered as human weapons struck its shields. Kane was thrown from her chair as the ship's power systems overloaded. Emergency lights flickered on as main power failed. "Damage report," she shouted. "Shields are down 60%, her engineering officer reported. "Main weapons are offline. Life support is functioning, but barely." "How is that possible? They only hit us twice." "Their weapons are far more advanced than anything in our databases. Each shot carries more energy than our shields were designed to handle." Kane looked at her tactical display and felt her confidence crumble. In 30 minutes of fighting, the Council had lost 18 ships. The human fleet had lost none. Worse, her remaining vessels were scattered and disorganized, while the humans moved with perfect coordination. "Admiral," her communications officer said, "we're receiving a transmission from the human command ship." Captain Roberts' image appeared on the main screen. He looked calm and professional, like someone discussing a routine military exercise rather than a battle that was reshaping galactic politics. "Admiral Kane," he said politely, Your fleet is badly damaged and outnumbered. I'm prepared to accept your surrender." "Surrender?" Kane's voice cracked with disbelief. "We outnumber you 2-1. "You outnumbered us," Roberts corrected. "Past tense." "And your surviving ships are in no condition to continue fighting. I'm offering you a chance to save the lives of your remaining crews." Kane looked at her tactical display again. Roberts was right. The Council fleet had been shattered. Her ships were damaged, scattered, and still couldn't target the enemy effectively. Continuing the fight would only result in more deaths, but surrendering to humans was unthinkable. The Council had never surrendered to anyone. "I need time to consider your offer," she said. "You have 10 minutes," Roberts replied. "After that, we'll assume you've chosen to continue fighting." The transmission ended, leaving Kane alone with the weight of an impossible decision. She could order her fleet to fight to the death, hoping that sheer determination might overcome human technological advantages. Or she could surrender and admit that the Council had been completely outmatched by the species they had dismissed. As primitive children, she chose pragmatism over pride. "All ships," she broadcast on the fleet frequency. "This is Admiral Kane. Cease fire and prepare to surrender." The silence that followed was deafening. In 300 years of Council history, no Council fleet had ever surrendered to a non-member species. Roberts accepted the surrender with quiet dignity. Council ships were escorted to safe positions where they could make repairs. Wounded personnel received medical attention from human doctors who treated their former enemies with professional care. It was a level of courtesy that shocked the Council survivors, but the real surprise came when Admiral Carter's image appeared on screens throughout the fleet. The veteran human commander looked directly into the camera with the calm confidence of someone who held all the cards. "People of the galaxy," he began, "today's battle was not about conquest or revenge. It was about respect. For 3 years, the Council treated humanity like children who needed guidance from their betters. They dismissed our contributions, mocked our capabilities, and assumed we would always need their protection." His words were being broadcast not just to the captured fleet, but to every inhabited world in Council space. The entire galaxy was watching as humanity announced its independence. "We don't want your territory," Carter continued. "We don't want to rule your worlds. We just want to be left alone to chart our own course among the stars. Human space is now off-limits to all Council vessels. Any attempt to enter without permission will be met with immediate and overwhelming force." On Nexus Prime, the Council chamber was in chaos. Representatives from dozens of species shouted accusations, demands, and threats. But underneath the noise was a new sound that hadn't been heard in Council chambers for centuries. Fear, the species they had patronized and dismissed, had become a power that could challenge their combined might. Worse, other non-Council species were already sending messages expressing interest in human-style independence. Councillor Vexthai, his earlier arrogance replaced by genuine terror, voiced what they were all thinking. What have we done? The answer was simple. They had created their own worst nightmare, an enemy they had driven away and given time to grow stronger. In the months that followed, 12 species formally withdrew from Council authority. Trade agreements collapsed as worlds chose to deal directly with humans rather than go through Council bureaucracy. The galactic order that had existed for centuries began to crumble. The age of human independence had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Council's greatest mistake wasn't underestimating human technology or military capability. It was forgetting that the most dangerous enemy is the one you've dismissed and given time to prove you wrong. Humanity had done exactly that.